Welcome to Tough Talk. My guest today is Suman Berry, Director General of the NCAR, and until recently a member of the Technical Advisory Committee of the RBI. I should also mention that I'm on the board of NCAR. Welcome to the show, Suman.
Thank you, Surjit, for having me on it.
Your organization has just come out, NCAR has just come out with forecasts on inflation and growth for the Indian economy. And the RBI, just a few days ago, came out with its forecasts. Can you just give us a glimpse of what your forecasts are and what your view is of the RBI?
Well, this is actually an update of our forecast for 9-10, and it's taking into account what we now know about global growth, what we now know about fiscal stimulus, and what we now think we know about the monsoon. And all of those are, of course, things that could change. We had previously thought that for 9-10, growth could be as low as 6.5 within a range. Now we're willing to call something like 7.2 with WPI inflation at under 4%, 3.7. So that, I guess, would mean that we are more optimistic than the RBI, which, while has stuck to its 6%, but with a so-called upward risk. So we're almost a full percentage point higher than them.
And, if you will, more than a full percentage point lower on inflation. Now, how do you compare that the two numbers, that is your set of forecasts and the RBI's, are somewhat not in sync?
Right.
And what are your thoughts on that? What could be going wrong with your forecast, and what could be possibly going wrong with the RBI's forecast?
Well, I mean, we are, I think, talking about the same thing, which is WPI
Let's hope so.
on a 12-month basis. I mean, what I don't know the details of what the RBI came up with. The reason that our own inflation forecast is lower than it was earlier, we had previously been projecting 5% inflation, is because of a combination of what we see happening on oil prices as compared to the last time, and to some extent on the exchange rate as well. So it's really the phenomenon of oil price driven inflation that is lower in our forecast compared to the past. There is a risk factor associated with the monsoon, although my own personal view on that is that because of the very successful procurement, that we do have the means in place.
Let's break this up into the inflation forecast and the growth forecast, and I think viewers would be quite interested. I've had a lot of problems with RBI's forecasts on inflation. For example, in October of last year, when commodity prices had crashed, we were in the midst of a big, huge crash, and people were talking about the Great Depression, that the RBI had forecast 5% inflation year on year for this March. It actually came out to be -1. Now, I don't know how many sort of central banks around the world miss their forecast just 6 months hence by that amount. Now let's take the forecast for next March, where the RBI is saying it's expecting it to be 5%. And, till date, for the last 8 months, inflation has been running at a zero pace, which means that the RBI is expecting something like 8% inflation from now till March. Well, does this make sense to you? You were on the advisory committee of the RBI. How do they do their calculations?
It's a good question. What I would like to refer to is more what is in the recent documents of the RBI, and frankly many of us have been educated by you and others on, as it were, the inadequacy of some of the indicators that are being used. I don't want to get too technical, this is a general audience, but I think that what we have all learned is that with inflation gyrating in the way that it has,
Tubar.com,